Hi, my name's Adam, and I've been at Joy Church for about 3 years. The first time I publicly accepted Christ was when I was around like 9 or 10. Probably one of the most significant was when I was diagnosed with lung disease at 27 and almost died. According to my wife, kind of died a couple times, like through that process in surgery and recovery. And if you know me, I love life, I love people, and thank God for a handful of people that were able to kind of be those stretcher friends like the Bible talks about, where they lowered that guy in through the roof, they broke it open, didn't matter if they're interrupting, and Jesus healed them because of their faith. And I really feel like even though I was a Christian, I needed other people to basically help me. The lung, it just felt like a sword was in me, stabbing me pretty much for like 4 months. It was awesome. Not really. Super painful. I had to sleep sitting up. Through the recovery process, I actually got in so much pain when I was in the hospital that I literally like gave up the will to live. Not in a suicidal way, more like I can't handle any more pain, God. I basically kind of had a quiet conversation with God and told him like I was done. And my wife was there. She had our 1-year-old and was pregnant with our second son, who was going to be due in a month. And here I am, lover of life, giving up the will to live because of the pain, which is pretty gnarly. It tells you how bad the pain was. And within 5 minutes, there was a knock on my door and a little voice said, "Adam, it's Debbie. The Lord told me I needed to come and pray for you." Yeah. And nobody heard that prayer. God heard that prayer, and I knew he heard it. If you're knocking on my door, you didn't go to the nurse's station because it told you go to the nurse's station and check in. So somebody was brave in doing what God called them to do. And I think I've told this story I don't know how many times, and I still cry. It's just powerful. Like God loves us, and he like cared for me, like little Adam out of these millions of people on the earth, you know, and he heard my prayer of giving up in life and knew the right person that could come and make it like, you know what, watch this, Adam. And she came and she prayed for me, and literally like a few days later was able to get out. And how awesome God is to show up the way he did, to care for me, knowing like this guy needs a little help, but I'm gonna still get the glory. And he did. I mean, I cry because there's no other way to explain it. So I think my wife was thankful too. If you're reaching the community, you're gonna grow. And I think a lot of the people that go to Joy Church have that heart. We're praying like, how do we give? You know, the widow gave out of what she didn't have. And so we're semi in that situation where we're like, what are we gonna give out of what we don't have? Oh, I heard somebody share that like give till it hurts, and it's gonna be a sacrifice, but it's a sacrifice that is continuing to build into this legacy of a church that other people did the same thing for us. I care about how many people are reached. I love that we're crowded and we need more space. We have something like this same God that saved my life and sent somebody supernaturally and said, hey, you need to go pray for Adam because he's dying, right? And no one even told her. Like, this same God wants to reach all these people, give them hope and forgiveness and freedom and life, like real life. I am Adam, and this is my courageous story.
How amazing is that? I love to hear the story after story of true life change and healing. And you know what's cool is that Adam is one but represents the whole. When we look at our life, God is doing amazing things in and through every one of us. And so I love being a part of Joy Church. I love seeing what God is doing in each and every one of our lives. My name is Ben Miller, lead pastor here at Joy Church, and I'm happy to be in church today for Mother's Day. How about you guys? What a beautiful day. We are in a Courageous series. We're actually on week 2 of a Courageous series. And during this series, we're following the life of the Israelites as they stepped into the Promised Land, the life of Joshua in and through the book of Joshua. There's a journey guide. If you guys don't have one of these, or didn't get it at the door, even if you raise your hand, someone will give you one. This is pertinent to have today. These are awesome, and we're actually journaling along through each week, but there's a devotion as well. I don't know how many of you guys have got to enjoy the devotion, but this week as I was reading through on day 5, I love it because he's talking about really having hope when when it's hard. In those moments, just like Adam had, when it's like there's all hope is lost and you have no hope in the hard times, what do you do and how do you hold on to this? I love this, and I want to read it to you. It says this: God sets before us a land of promise, but he also a land of battle. And he continues to say, he is with us every step of the way. And it's true. Sometimes we get this perspective that as Christians, or maybe you know a Christian from a distance, and it sounds like it's like life's always easy for them. It's like, hey, get saved, give your life to Jesus, and everything is just going to work out. And then you get saved, give your life to Jesus, and everything doesn't just work out. And you're thinking, I think I missed something in the introduction part of Christianity. The reality is it's not, when we give our life to Jesus and start following him, it doesn't mean that everything comes easy. What it means is that we don't live in our battle, but we actually move to a place of victory. And that when we face life challenges, just like everybody else, is that God is with us. Just like he was with Adam in the middle of his despair and his frustration, all of a sudden, someone shows up and it could only be God. This is beautiful, and I love this, is that he's with us every step of the way. The devotions are great. I encourage you to continue to read on to them. Day 6 was all about character supports destiny, and it's excellent. So right now what we're going to do is on page, I believe it's page 18, 19. Who's going to find this? 19. Someone was already there. That wasn't fair. I was looking for it. Come on. Page 19 is week 2, Courageous to Leave My Past Behind. And we're going to walk through this today. I recognize that although we are all here together in this one moment, and as a church, hey, we're on a journey to see God fulfill the promises that he has for this community and for this church. Although we're all on the same journey and committed to the journey, we all actually came from a different place. Like, yes, we want to move forward together, but every one of us has different life experience. We have different stories. We have different even apprehensions or wounds and pains and hurts. And if you have ever been hurt by someone, or hurt by the church, hurt by leaders, or even hurt by God, you showed up at the right time, right message today. I want to speak into this. I feel like the Lord actually has something for us. He has breakthrough for each and every one of us. And it's not by accident that you're here today. God actually wants to move you from defeat into victory. And so this is for you. About a year after we moved from Ireland, a year and a half, I don't know exactly when, but about 6 months into pastoring here at Joy Church, I remember a conversation I had with the Lord. I was praying, and I was excited, I was hopeful, the weather was good, and just like it is now, please hold for a long time weather. And I remember having this conversation. I was just praying with the Lord, and I felt like the Lord asked me a question. He said, Ben, what are the dreams that you have on your heart? And my immediate response was, nope, no. No, the answer is no. I'm not going to answer that question. In fact, I diverted very quickly, and I said, no, God, how about you just tell me what's on your heart? I can work on that. Like, I'm not actually ready to bring my heart to the table. And I recognized with him just asking one question, I realized how locked my heart was, how locked my hope was, how locked my dreams were. It's like they're locked in this box. And the reason is because I had spent the previous 4 years getting my hopes and my dreams completely smashed and shattered. Rachel and I, back in 2013, we moved to Ireland, and we spent 4 years in Ireland, and it was a dream of our heart, actually, even from college. And so we were released in that. The Lord answered this dream, and we moved to Ireland. This is back in 2013. And what's amazing is that he answered that prayer, and it's like, we're so thankful, and he brought us into this place of promise, and he fulfilled so many dreams. But then once we stepped into that, I spent 4 years of my life with every dream after that was completely pulverized. Every time I brought a hope to the table, every time I brought a dream or a prayer or something that God had said, it was like day after day, situation after situation, I just was broken down to a point where I after 4 years, like I didn't realize, but I had closed myself off. And I got to a place that's like, God, I'm cool with your will. I'm cool with you doing things. I'm here with you, and I'm done bringing me. I'm too hurt. I'm in too much pain. The reality is like we had been running a business, and it was struggling. We had, it was like you get a beautiful big deal. It would all work out. Everything was perfect, and at the last minute, everything would fall through. And the only thing you could think of is like, what in the world's going on? Like, how is this happening? And every time we had been on a 2-year church plant. Actually, we moved over there. We were helping with a church plant. We'd given 2 years of our life. It was growing. It was thriving. It was doing well. And then the pastor came in and decided that we were going to shut it all down. And of course, we're sitting there going, why are we shutting it down? And we're gonna go into groups and we're gonna spread it out and we're all gonna become house churches. And the best part was when I asked, okay, like then what, do you want me to lead a house church? No, not really. Like I don't trust you to lead one. I'm thinking like, okay, you know, like right. And it's like everything we'd given our life to. Rachel was pregnant with twins. Jesus, you know. I had to read that scripture, the blessing of the Lord is rich and adds no sorrow to it. The reality was we're struggling to find a place to live. I was homesick. We were struggling in work, struggling in life, struggling with joy, struggling with absolutely everything. And it just felt like for 4.5 years of my life, every time I brought myself to the table, it was broken. Like it was just demolished and shattered. And there were several conversations I had with the Lord where I'm like, oh, really? You know, like thank you for this. And so when he asked me that question, hey, what are the dreams in your heart? Like he was exposing me. He exposed the fact that I had so locked off a portion of my life to him. And I didn't want to dream anymore. I didn't want to hope anymore. I was totally content, but really not, to just like, all right, God, we'll do whatever you want. Like your will be done. That's totally fine. But I'm going to remove myself from the equation, my heart from the equation, and I'm just going to trust you. That was a tough part of my life. I found that I started out like young and full of promise and full of hope, but then over time I realized I had become measured. I'd become really skeptical. I lived with like this, I'll believe it when I see it mentality. Like a God, I love you, I trust you, but I'll believe it when you prove it. Some people call it like growing up. Other people call it like business smarts. The reality is when I stepped back and I looked at it for what it was, I just felt like it was hurt. Like people hurt people. Over and over again, they hurt people. And what we end up doing is if we can't hide physically or get away from them, we start to just kind of like hide on the inside. And when your hurt comes from someone like, I don't know, God, you can't hide. And so what you do is instead of hiding on this planet, you just hide your heart and you just put it in a box and you just continue to hold it over and over and over again. And so when I look back, I had people hurt because that's it. That's life. I had life hurt. And I'd been hurt by leaders. I'd been hurt by the church. I'd been hurt by, the reality is when I look back, I felt like I'd been hurt by God. And so when he asked me that question, what are the dreams in your heart? My first response was no. I'm not even going to go there with you. Like I don't have that in me. I'm not even going to go there. Like I want to avoid it at all costs. And he exposed something in me. But I realized too, obviously through a process, he wasn't trying to shame me. He wasn't trying to like rub my face in it and bring up past wounds, that he actually had an intention for exposing me. And the intention for exposing me was because he wanted to heal the very thing that was hurting within me. He actually wanted to bring hope and healing and freedom, but yet he had to like expose. And this is one thing I love and hate about God. He doesn't mind exposing us. It's like this weird, like, God, I love that you expose it because you want to heal it, but at the same time, like, really? Really? You're just going to keep exposing me over and over and over again? And what I needed was I actually needed to move forward. In order to move forward, I had to be courageous to leave my past behind, to process it, to walk through it, to be able to get to a place that says, okay, I'm willing to be in this place again, knowing I've been hurt here, and I'm willing to God to give you one more chance. It's beautiful. It's in the story of the Israelites. Really, this is the story of Joshua we look at today. Joshua faced this exact same thing, is that all of a sudden there's a promise a second time to go into the promised land. It's a brand new generation, a brand new day. Nothing seems the same. And they're like, okay, we're going to do this. He gets a word from God in Joshua chapter 1, be strong and courageous. It's all going to work out. I'm with you. I've promised Moses. And it's like there's this excitement. He goes to all the people and the leaders of Israel. We're going to take the land, and God's calling us to do this, and we're going to be strong and courageous. And then there's some random guy, I'm sure, in the crowd that raises his hand and says, hey, I got an idea. We should send spies. We should send spies. That's what we should do. What we looked at last week is in Numbers 13 and 14. They sent 12 spies who came back and created a massive unbelief that actually led an entire generation to walk into the wilderness. And Joshua spent 40 years of his life in a wilderness and not in the promised land because of this one thing. And so you can almost imagine like the guy in the back of like, I got an idea. And Joshua's thinking, shoot him. Shoot him. Get rid of that person. Like, no, we're not doing spies. We're not going to be here again. And so all of a sudden Joshua, in Joshua chapter 2, finds himself in the exact same spot that he was 40 years previous. And I can only imagine Joshua sitting here going like, no. We're not going to repeat. We're not going to do this. Maybe you found yourself at that moment in life where all of a sudden you were like, I've been here before, and I've been hurt here before. And Joshua wants to avoid it at all costs. This is beautiful. This exposes Joshua. In Joshua chapter 2, verse 1, I want to read you this. Then Joshua secretly sent out 2 spies from the Israelite camp to the acacia grove. He instructed them, scout out the land on the other side of the Jordan River, especially around the Jericho. So the 2 men set out, and they came to the house of a prostitute named Rahab, and they stayed there for the night. If you leave that on just for a second, what's interesting is that maybe we can read this as a historical document and go, oh, great. So they sent out spies, and they went to go check out the land, and this is awesome. But like if you know the history of Joshua, you know that this is like a very serious pain point for him. In fact, this is a 40-year wound. Joshua didn't want to send spies. But you know, someone said we should send spies. And what you find is that whether he learned his lesson or you can see a total like apprehension to stepping back into something where he didn't want to go back into the wilderness again for 40 more years and die. He really wanted to move forward. In fact, in Numbers 13, him and Caleb were the ones standing up and saying, guys, we can do this. If God is with us, we have the faith, we can go and we can take this land. And now all of a sudden, he finds himself, his very next step after saying, yes, God, I'll do what you say. His very next step is, oh no, I don't know if I can do this. And so what you see is instead of sending 12, he sends 2. And you can almost bet like the conversation. He instructed them. Like, you know that this conversation was a little bit different than the first time. This conversation with him was a little bit more like, okay, you're going to go in, you're going to look, and when you come back, you're going to say nothing wrong. And if you do, I'm going to kill you and kill your whole family, and we're going to shut you down. That's what we're going to do, because there's no way that he's going back. There's no way that he's going to repeat himself. Somebody convinced him to send spies, so they sent 2, not 12. And all of a sudden, I love this word, he instructed them. You can only imagine what that looked like. The word actually means secretly. He secretly spoke to them and secretly, silently told them to go. Like, we're not going to let this go public. We're not going to let this wildfire get out of control. This has cost him too much. In fact, lesson learned as well, he doesn't say go throughout the whole land and check it out. He sends them to one place. He sends them to the next place. He doesn't say go check everything out. He sends them to one place in Jericho, and he says go and come back. It's also interesting that they go to the house of Rahab, the prostitute. And I almost wonder, it's not in there, but I think if we know that this is a 40-year wound, we know that this is something that he's super apprehensive about, the fact that he's like over-instructing, the fact that he's trying to do it in secret, the fact that he's moved from 12 to 2. Like, the reality is the 2 men they go straight to the house of a prostitute. I almost wonder if he asked them or told them or instructed them to do this, like in the ability to be able to discredit them or burn them if they came back. You know, the Israelites didn't have prostitution within the camp. It was something that was completely foreign to them. So for 2 men to leave and go to the house of a prostitute and completely discredit the holiness, discredit who they are and discredit their word, if they came back and they spread unbelief and distrust, Joshua was able to discredit them. It doesn't say he set him up for that, but I can tell you that's what I'd be doing. Everyone who works for me is nervous now. Would you do me a favor? But he had the ability to discredit them. Like, you can see in Joshua chapter 2, verse 1, in this one moment, all of a sudden Joshua is facing this fear of like, I've been here before. Joshua is completely exposed. He's exposed from a wound, from a hurt. He does not trust people, especially spies. And to be honest, what's being tested in Joshua's life is like, he's being exposed as his even trust of God. Like, am I going to trust that all of a sudden I'm here again in the same spot that I've been so mortally wounded, wasted 40 years of my life, and now we're going to do a reenactment? He didn't want a reenactment. He wanted to move forward into promise and into blessing. The question really is, why does God bring us back to a place of pain, a place of hurt, a place of loss over and over again? It's because he actually wants to lead us into victory. And when we look at our own lives, And maybe you found yourself at a place before where all of a sudden you show up to another, and you're hopeful, and then you show up and you recognize the warning signs of like, I've been here before, I've been hurt here before. That's the moment where you go, God, why did you do this to me? But he's not afraid to expose you, and he's not afraid to bring you back to a place of defeat. Why? Because he actually wants to move you to a place of victory. He wanted to bring Joshua and all the Israelites into a brand new place of victory, and the reality is he wanted to write a new story. And so Joshua was courageous enough to walk into a place of pain, a place of hurt, a place of distrust, and a place of brokenness just because God led him there once more. And what we see is because he was courageous enough to step into that place, deal with his past, all of a sudden there's a brand new story that's written. The story goes like this, is that the men are there. The moment that they show up, the king of Jericho actually goes to the house of Rahab and says, send out the men. You have to hand them over. She says, they're gone. They've left. She hid them in the house. She told them, I think they went that way. So they started a whole group of people to go find them so that they could kill them. They were scared of them. And that night, she actually went up and she had a conversation with them. In Joshua 2, verse 8, it says this, before the spies had went to sleep that night, Rahab went up to the roof to talk with them. And this is the conversation. I know the Lord has given you this land, she told them. We are all afraid of you. Everyone in the land is living in terror, for we heard how the Lord made a dry path for you through the Red Sea when you left Egypt. This is 40 years ago. They're referencing the very moment, like 40 years ago when they went through the Red Sea. That doesn't mean like it was just a story in the Bible and this is a great little story. That means every surrounding nation knew. They knew of the plagues of Egypt. They knew of the crossing of the Red Sea. And they actually had this like holy fear of like, God is with you wherever you go. And if you choose to step here, we're done. There was this beautiful holy fear. And in fact, she's saying every single person over here is afraid of you. She negotiates really an escape for her and her family. And he says, if you stay in your house and you put a scarlet twine fabric over your window, he says, when we come and we take over, you will not be destroyed, which we find out later here soon when we look at the Battle of Jericho. When all of the walls fell, they actually even historically have found a spot that there's one spot in the wall that didn't fall. Out of the entire city, only Rahab's house is the one that didn't fall. And they said, if all your family is inside, you will be saved and we will save you. This was an act of God that actually saved her, an act of faith that saved her. It wasn't an act of these two spies, and it's beautiful. She has the courage to say, hey, would you stand up for me? I stood up for you. And Joshua 2, verse 23 and 24 finishes with this. As soon as they finish, the spies go, they camp out, and they head back to Joshua. Directly from Jericho back to Joshua. Then the two spies came down the hill country, crossed the Jordan River, and they reported to Joshua, the only person that they were able to report to. Don't go to your tent. Don't go to your people. Don't tell anyone. Come straight to me. I love this. All that had happened. The Lord has given us the whole land, they said, for all the people of the land are terrified by us. This is a beautiful story, and it only happens, and it's only true because Joshua was actually willing to face his past and not avoid it. And now, all of a sudden, what we read in the rest of the book is a brand new story. If they would have never sent spies, they would have never known what the people were thinking. Not one person would be saved, and they wouldn't know what the Lord had done or gone before them. And the reality is that it was on purpose that God brought him back to that one place, and he was courageous to face his past. To actually say, okay, I'm not going to avoid it. We're going to walk into it, and to one more time, through pain, place his trust in God. And the reality is that God wants to give you a new story as well. And although we recognize that as a church, we're saying, hey, we want to move forward together as one voice in unity for all that God has and has promised this community and this church and where we're going, we all come from a different place of pain. And each and every one of us, myself included, carry this beautiful baggage that is pain. We've been hurt by people. We've been hurt by leaders. We've been hurt by the church. We've been hurt by God. I love it when I have a conversation, they say, man, I've been really hurt by the church. My response usually is, me too. Me too. I've been in church my whole life. I've been mortally wounded by the church. Yeah, I get it. The difference is I didn't choose to walk away. We all have pain. We all have hurts. And the reality is the church doesn't hurt people. People hurt people. And we have to step back and stop blaming the church and step back and say, okay, maybe it was a leader who hurt you. Maybe it was a person who hurt you. Like maybe it was a person in a position of authority. Maybe you've shown up before at a church and all of a sudden they say, hey, we're doing a 2-year capital campaign. And that's your trigger of like, oh, did you say campaign? Oh, I've been mortally wounded through campaigns. I get to hear all the stories because I talk to people over and over again. And they're like, well, this one time I was at a church and this thing happened. I will never do this again. And this will never happen again. Like the word campaign, the word like movement, forward movement, it triggers each and every one of us because we all have baggage. I don't know what you carry. I don't know what your past wounds are. I don't know where you've lost trust for people or for leaders or for the church. I don't know where you've been hurt before. Maybe just the idea of God has a good future in store for all of us. And you're thinking to yourself, maybe it exposes like your current lack or unanswered prayers. And you're thinking, why would I believe that God would do something amazing in the church when he's not even doing something amazing in my life? But God's actually brought you to this place to expose those things in your heart. And if you're being honest, you step back and you go, you know what? I think I have a I'll believe it when I see it attitude. I think I'm sitting in a place going, God, prove it. Prove it, and then I'll believe you. What's beautiful is that God gently exposes us. He doesn't shame us. He doesn't remind us of the past so he can rub it into us. He actually exposes things in us like doubt and fear and unbelief because he wants to bring us to a place of healing and freedom and victory. God's desire is to actually help you write a new story. But when we look at our lives, whether it's as a church or as an individual, when you look back at your life, the question is, what in the world are you facing? What are those things in your life that you're like, man, this is exposing me, and every time this thing comes up, I feel exposed again and again and again? What are the things in your life that you're struggling with, you're struggling to hold on to? What I want to do is I want to take a moment in your book for today as you're writing down different notes, even grab a pen, you have a journey guide, to be able to answer that question, like what is it that you're facing today? What are the challenges that you're facing? When you step in and we talk about God's great future and we talk about moving forward together as a church and we talk about all that the Lord wants to do, what is it in you that's all of a sudden being triggered? Like what's being exposed? The beauty is we don't see it. I don't see it. You don't see mine. I don't see yours. But we are all facing it today. God's actually exposing you because he wants to deal with something. And you can't move forward in victory until he actually does a work in your heart. And so if you have your book, I want you to even take time as we finish out today, even this week as you're journaling, going through this, to ask that question, God, what are the challenges that I'm facing? Maybe you're looking at it and going, why, how in the world are you expecting me to operate in faith when I'm not seeing God at work in my own life? How in the world are you expecting me to participate financially when I'm not seeing breakthrough financially? I need a job, or this isn't happening. Like I can tell you from a place of pain myself, the moment where God says, hey, I want to know what dreams are in there. And I'm thinking to myself, so you can crush them? That's what you want? Like you want to just crush another one? Sweet. Sounds great. But I recognize that my heart is stuck in a place that says, prove it, and then I'll believe you. Like this is what Joshua did, is he actually was courageous enough to say, not walk away from the past and say, you know what, we're going to move, we're not going to do spies, we're cutting that plan's horrible. Like he actually was able to step in a place and say, God, you're exposing me, and I'm still going to operate in faith. Like I'm still going to move forward to this. I'm not going to prejudge my future based off my past. I want to say that again. How many of us are sitting here prejudging our future based off of our past? Well, based off of what God has done, this is probably what he will do. The reality is that we have a choice, and God's giving us another choice, just like he gave another generation a choice to walk into promise. The reality, the question that we face today is, will we give God another chance? Will we be willing to trust God again? Or are we going to exclude ourselves and simply wait for God to prove himself? Because one of them is called faith. It's called courage. To stare at all of those exposures, all of those pains, all those doubts, all those fears, and say, you know what, I'm going to choose courage to step into that, even though it hurt me in the past, it could hurt me in the future, but I'm still going to believe God again. Or the other one's called unbelief. And the reality is, unbelief is what kept an entire generation from walking into the promises of God. So you're faced with a choice. The same choice that Joshua had, the same choice that all the Israelites have, and the same choice that we face today over and over again. And I got news for you. like God exposing this in this season, if you choose, you know what, it's too much for me, it's too much pain, I don't want to go through this again, I'm just going to silently quit, like Adam said, I'm just going to silently quit, I'm not going to be a part, maybe I'll go find another church, maybe I'll do something like that. Like, I have news for you. You're going to find yourself at this place again. So deal with it now. Well, there's a group of people that are all doing it together, that are saying, hey, and I'm not speaking from like the standpoint of like, oh, you know, you guys have fears and I don't have any fears. Like, hello. Like, I'm a real person as well. I have to also digest my things, my fears, my past. The moment I'm like, are you sure, God? Are you sure you want to do this? Like, are you, like with me, and again, and it hurts, and why would I do this? We have two goals in this campaign as we've listed, and I love this. The primary goal really is 100% participation on the spiritual journey. Nailed it. I love that. Your secondary goal is to raise $5 million over the next 2 years. The reality is our total goal is $9 million, but we're going to set out to raise $5 million. The primary goal is 100% participation. It's actually Joshua's primary goal as well. He actually wanted to get everybody across the river, everybody engaged. That's what he wanted to do. And his secondary goal wasn't just to get them across the river. His secondary goal was to get them from belief to action. They actually no, we don't want you just to show up. You're going to have to fight. Like, you're going to have to actually put heart to it and get your heart here. And the reality is the primary goal is a belief goal, is that I'm a here goal, and the secondary goal is an action goal. And I love this because it's the same goal that Joshua had. Now, we can't accomplish number 2 without number 1. That's the reality. We can't accomplish number 2 without number 1. But the interesting thing is that number 2 actually exposes if you're a part of number 1. Because I can tell you is that you can be here with your face and with your body, but your heart can't be here. I've done it. I've lived in those seasons where I was here in person, but I wasn't actually here in my spirit. And what you find is that it's really hard to engage in anything number 2 if you're not engaged in number 1. And so what God is doing, he's actually bringing us into a place in which he wants to re-engage your heart. That's his primary goal. But we can't have number 2 without number 1, and number 2 exposes if you're actually here or not. Because we can go through an entire season, we can walk through it, and you can be like, man, to be honest, I'm just waiting for God to prove himself before I believe him. But God doesn't want that. In fact, that's called unbelief, and you'll miss out. Because what he wants to do is not just something in and through his church, he actually wants to do something in and through you. And you don't want to miss out on the personal aspect of this. What I mean by that is that if somebody wrote a $5 million check today, we would still go on the journey. Because if someone wrote a $5 million check and fulfilled number 2, we still have number 1, where God actually wants to engage his church to believe for more, to believe in faith, and he actually wants to lead his people to a place of healing, to a place of trust again, to a place of belief, and to a place of promise. For him, his primary goal is actually number 1. He's going to use the secondary goal, but his primary goal is number 1. That's his heart. And the reality is that for him, it's all about 100% engagement of our heart in faith, trusting God to believe for more. And I can remember that moment where he said, Ben, what are the dreams on your heart? With my first thought saying no. And I remember over time, not at first, but there was this season where I had to pray, and I'm like, all right, God, but how about I give you an easy one? I'm going to give you one that I don't super care about so that when you crush it to death, I don't care again. And then I can go hide again. And I remember there was almost this season where the Lord's like, well, just trust me again. Trust me one more time. Let me do it again. Give me another go. And what's amazing is that even in my life story, I can see that the Lord has... The dreams in my heart were secondary. What he really cared about was just getting to my heart. Because I had closed it off and held it, and it was promise, and it was dreams. To be honest, if somebody did write a $5 million check, please do. We would just use it for phase 3 and build Kids Church Building all at the same time. Because there's more to be had. There's more to go. But the hope, the goal, the primary goal is actually to get yourself to a place of victory and out of defeat. And God uses opportunity, whether it's challenges in your life or campaigns or the church or movement forward or movement backwards, everything in life he actually uses just to continue to get to the primary goal, which is your heart. That would be troubling to wake up to. That would be really, really hard. The next step is really all about courageously bringing your heart to the table. And that's the challenge. Will you go from belief to action? Because in belief, you can say you believe, and you can stand there, and you can believe that God is amazing, and God can do great things. But you're really sitting there going, God, once you prove it, I'll believe it. And I know that because I've been there. I've been at a place that says, I'm 100% in, I totally believe you, now prove yourself. But that's actually unbelief. And what he wants to do is he actually wants to get to your heart to a place that says, no, I want to move forward and I am on board. I want to encourage you not to let your past be the filter by which you choose to engage. Don't let that filter your commitment through pain. Like, okay, well, I'm just going to filter everything forward from a place of pain. Like, that's not the goal. That's not what he's going for. And I'm going to encourage you not to prejudge the future, whether it's your future or our future based off your past. Like, we actually want to get to a place of trust again. The stuff that you write, the things that are holding you up, the things that are being exposed, the challenges that you face, I want to encourage you to continue to ride them. But we have to acknowledge them. We have to actually face them just like Joshua did, and we have to bring them to a place that says, even though I have pain, I'm going to trust you again. I want to encourage you, grab your devotional guide, stuff you've written on. Maybe you want to close it so someone next to you doesn't see their name. But to be able to, just even if you wanted to close your eyes, but let's just take a moment. And I'm going to ask, God, would you expose us? Holy Spirit, would you speak to each and every one of us right now? What are the things in our life that are holding us back? Challenges that as we see the days ahead, as we think forward for a good future, for our lives, for your church, for your house, like what are the things that are challenging us? To even give him a moment. As we will right now, Holy Spirit, would you expose us? And to let him speak. And God, we trust that you're going to speak, and you are speaking to each and every one of us. That as we bring these things to you, as we submit them to you, as we know that you're not just going to hand us victory, but we actually have to have the courage to step through defeat. We have to have the courage to step through unbelief, and the courage to step through fear, the courage to face all the things that we're facing so that you would lead us into promise and to victory once more. One of the things on my list that I feel like comes up over and over in my life is I don't want to fail. I have a fear of failure. I don't want to fail. And it's a lot to take on. There's a lot to do. There's a lot forward. But I look at it like whether it's as a dad or as a husband or as a leader, or as whatever it is, whatever sphere we hold, like that I don't want to fear. I want to fail. And there's been seasons in my life in which I tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed. And so it's like I know that failure is an option simply because I've lived that option over and over. But I don't want to fail in this one. And these are things that we have to bring to him. And so right now, we just bring this list to you. And Holy Spirit, we bring each and every one of our lists, our fears, our unbelief, our doubts, our things that we say that you keep exposing, you keep bringing back to us, that we're not good enough, that we'll never be good enough, that we'll fail, that like whether it's finances or ability or just all the things that we have in our list that you're exposing and speaking to us, we bring them to you, and we choose to trust you one more time with our life, to acknowledge the past, to ask you to forgive it, to ask you to heal it, and to actually walk into a place of forgiveness. And so what we actually choose to do is we choose to forgive every person that's wounded us, every situation, every deal lost, every dollar wasted, every season that we felt was worthless, every relationship that we poured our heart into and then wounded us. We choose to forgive every leader, person in position of authority. We choose to forgive every wound, and we ultimately choose to forgive you. So God, we acknowledge the past. We know it's there, but we choose to walk in forgiveness. Lord, would you help us forgive, to release that, but then to have the courage to actually step forward in faith and say, God, I'm going to believe one more time. I'm going to believe again. I'm going to jump in. I'm actually going to get my heart all in on the journey. I'm going to get my heart in on connecting with you. And I'm going to courageously leave my past behind, and I'm going to step into all that you have, knowing that I could get hurt again. But I'm going to choose to walk in forgiveness and walk in grace. And so, Lord, would you help us just remove all that stuff, all those things that are being exposed in our life, and would you free us to a place of healing, so that as we step into devotion, as we step into obedience, as we step into all that you have for us, that we would do so not with apprehension of the past, that we would somehow relive it, but with expectation that you're writing a new story for each and every one of us. And so we choose to trust you again and put our hope in you again, and to reach out to you again and believe in you again. May you come and rewrite each and every one of our stories, and then may this next season be the best season, one where we walk in wholeness and healing and forgiveness. I choose to open up my heart one more time and say, all right, be gentle with it, please, but I trust you. And I will place my trust in you because I'm 100%, you have my heart. Because you 100% gave us yours. So God, we submit our ways to your ways, our life to your life. And we ask that you would do a miracle and a healing in each and every one of us as we trust you to leave all that's behind and to walk into a new day. In Jesus' name.